How bad off is our unrighteousness, our ungodliness? How bad off is the world? How much of God's wrath has it incurred? Does it deserve God's wrath? Do men deserve God's wrath? Do I deserve God's wrath? Yes. Yes, 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 and yes till eternity comes. Verse 16 starts with a word that one of the biggest things, I don't know why, maybe I just didn't pay attention in school, but one of the biggest things that Brett Baggett's helped me learn is that if there's a 4, I should go backwards. Verse 16 starts with 4. So let's go backwards. Verse 15. This is how we ended last week. So I am eager to preach the gospel to you also who are in Rome. So he's about to explain, why am I eager to preach the gospel to those who are in Rome? Why am I eager to bring the gospel to Christians? For I, Paul, am not ashamed of the gospel. For it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. What is Paul not ashamed of? He's not ashamed of the gospel that he's been set apart for. Do you remember in the very beginning of last week, where Paul says, I'm an apostle, I'm set apart for the gospel of God. So he brings up the gospel right away. Then he gives somewhat of an explanation from it. And then at the end, he says, I'm eager to come and preach it to you. And then he starts to lay out, well, what is the gospel? Why is he not ashamed of it? How can he stand before the wrath of God and have an answer? How can he not feel the burden of his shame? For it is the power of God for salvation. Who is it the power of God for salvation for? To everyone who believes. Let's stay on that for a second. Paul's purposely trying to get a point to us. He's not just using the word power. It's not a common word that they're going to use to describe the gospel. He's using this word because he wants you to see how strong it is. He wants you to understand that before he lays out in verses 18 through 23 all of our sin, before he lays out our ungodliness and unrighteousness, before he lays out our darkened hearts that are idol factories, that try to do everything they can to suppress the truth, he lays out what is much greater than that. Your heart without Jesus is unfathomably dark. It's pitch black. But Jesus' light is so bright that it will shine through whether you want it to or not. And to that those he calls with his gospel, he is going to clean them up. He has the power to do that. Your sin is no match for Jesus' grace. My sin is no match for the God who calls me out of darkness and transfers me into the kingdom of his light. This power is the only power in the world that matters. What are some powers that matter in your life? In America, we really hold up the power of freedom, which is freedom's a good thing. But we try to take it and make it into an idol. And we try to say things like, you have to be absolutely free in every decision you make, even though that's not true. You can't make any decision that doesn't affect every single person in this room. Have you ever seen The Butterfly Effect? It's a very good movie. It has Ashton Kutcher in it. I promise it's a good movie. In the beginning of the movie, Ashton Kutcher realizes that he has this power That if he can remember something vividly enough, he can go back in time and he can make a change. He can do something to try to change the future by going back in time and changing how something happened. But every time he does it, he finds out that he'll change one thing, but it affects so many other things that he ends up probably making something else worse. Sometimes it's his life. Sometimes it's someone else's life. And he goes to see his father, who he realizes has the same power. He says, how do I fix it? What do I need to do? Every time I go back, I make something worse. It seems like I can't fix everything. That my freedom isn't enough. I have the freedom to change time, but yeah, I always change everyone else's life and make it worse. And his father says, you're trying to play God. And that is absolutely what we do when we think that I have to have so much freedom that there's no way that anyone can infringe on it. There's no way that anyone can do anything about it. That if you want to make a choice that would affect my life, that it's got to be okay with me. That's just suppressing the truth. We all know that's not true. If I walk down the street and accidentally bump into you, I affected your life whether you liked it or not. If I just choose to wear a blue shirt tomorrow, it's going to affect you in some way. Freedom's not God. It's a powerful thing, but it's not as powerful as the gospel. But there's some other powerful things. Is your will powerful? The things that you want to decide to love? What about love? Is it powerful? Have you ever heard anyone say love is enough? Or just choose love? Or you just need to love? You know what my religion is? Love. You know what my spirituality is? Love. When I write my profile down, I was actually filling out a doctor's application the other day. I was seeing a new doctor and they make you fill out tons of paperwork. And they actually asked for my religion. You know what I wrote down? Love. Love. They said, what church do you go to? I said, Church of Love. No, I didn't say that. The church of love is not powerful enough. And my idea of love is certainly not powerful enough. The only thing powerful enough to deal with my ungodliness, my unrighteousness, the ways I try to suppress the truth, the ways that I would look at creation and say, no, that probably just is by happenstance that we're here. And even if there was a God, he's probably indifferent to us. It's no match for his grace. It's no match for his calling. When he calls you to believe, there's no turning back. His call is without revoke. You belong to Jesus now. And you'll be grateful for it. You'll be so glad. Why is this gospel powerful? Well, one, because it belongs to Jesus. And two, because it's the only good news. Do you remember last week when Brett was going out and explaining what the word gospel meant? And he pointed out that the phrase of the gospel, it's the only good news. It's the only good news that can bring great joy. You know, sometimes I'll be at work and I'll have too much time to myself to think, which is always a bad thing. And I'll be sitting there and I'll start to get depressed and I'll think, working at a bank this doesn't fill me with purpose. That sometimes I think about the concept of money and I just want to throw up. And sometimes people give me money and I put it on a computer that they now have this much and they didn't have this much before, and I just think about how pointless it all is. None of it matters. And the truth is, that's me ignoring the power of the gospel, the only thing that brings purpose. That's me ignoring the fact that if this is true, if this is powerful, it's going to change everything in my life. Read with me verse 17. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith, for faith. As it is written, the righteous shall live by faith. This is a phrase that I kind of struggled with when I read through it first, because I feel like if you read through too fast, you're really going to miss what it's saying when it says from faith, for faith. Another great thing that makes the gospel powerful is you have no control over it. Your works are not what it's based off of. That it has to proceed from faith, for faith. Jesus is not only the beginner of your faith, he's not only the one who grants you faith, he's not only the one who calls you out of darkness, pulls you in, and gives you faith, he's also the one who sustains your faith. He's also the one who gives you the ability to live by faith. Then the next word that's tough with is righteousness. The righteous shall live by faith. Let me tell you what this phrase isn't saying. This isn't saying, you want to know who lives by faith? The righteous, the best of the best, the world's greatest, the saints, the ones that you look at and you just go, man, that guy has got it together. That person, man, he's so sharp. You know how nice Chase is? Chase would give you the shirt off your back. Give me the shirt off your back right now, Chase. Show him. That's not what it means. It means the righteousness that is imputed to you, because when God looks at you, he sees his son and the sacrifice he has made for you. He sees you covered in the blood that has been spilled by Jesus. He sees you not in your sin, but fully saved, justified, now being sanctified, and it's as good as done that it's glorified. He sees you as righteous. Not that you are righteous. Paul made that clear in verses 18 through 23. But that Jesus has made you righteous. He's made you as good as righteous because he imputes his righteousness onto you. He lays it on top of you, as if I took my suit jacket off right now and placed it upon someone else and said, look, that is their suit jacket now. He's not just letting you borrow it. He's eternally holding it on to you. That he's forever resurrected. That your righteousness is never again in question because he's never letting it go. You have this eternal advocate who is divine and eternally has a human body, eternally holding up his end of the deal, that you're saved. And now I want to come back to that challenge that I gave you right at the beginning. And this is where we're going to end today. Is the gospel power in your life? This was the challenge I issued to myself this week. When I stood at work and I think about the purposelessness of what I'm doing, I think about how it doesn't really have an eternal effect. I think about the fact that that's not true, because the gospel is powerful. That even in the things that don't seem important, the little minute details, they're not that minute. That if the gospel is powerful, it's going to infect every area of my life. That it is going to be the blood that pumps through my veins. That there will be no part of my body that doesn't have the gospel flowing through it. And if it does, just like when blood doesn't pump to any part of your body, it's going to be very clear. And I don't say this to stand on a soapbox and say that I have it all together and that I've already figured out that the gospel is powerful. But I say this because I want you to be hit with the same challenge. Is the gospel powerful in your life? Is it good news? Or is it just good advice? Is the gospel just an addition to your life? Outside of attending a church on Sundays, outside of the fact that you can write Christian on that doctor's paperwork, What has the gospel changed in your life? Do the people at your work know that you're a Christian? What about your friends, your family? Has it changed the way you interact with them? When you read the righteous shall live by faith, and you see that word live, true life in Jesus, that power that could bring you there because you could never get there on your own, has that changed you? Is the gospel just a good addition to your life? Let me ask you one more question. If you weren't a Christian, what would be different? Would you be working the same job? Living in the same town? Would you have the same friends? How would you treat people? The same? Maybe the gospel isn't power to you. Maybe it's not that great. Maybe you don't see it for what it is. Maybe you're suppressing the truth in your heart. Because if it is power, nothing's the same. Have you ever had a dramatic event happen in your life? Have you lost a loved one? Have you had a bad relationship end? Have you lost a friend? Have you lost a friendship? Have you ever experienced something so painful that things just can't be the same going onward? Have you experienced such great joy that it changed you as a person? Is the gospel the same? Has the gospel done the same thing for your life? Are things never going to be the same? I remember going to Winterfest in Arlington, Texas when I was 16 years old. And I went to this service, and I'm not going to get into the theology of it because it would hurt the story. And frankly, so I go to the service and I have an experience that is so emboldening that afterwards I'm just crying. I'm 16 years old. I probably really embarrassed to cry in public. And I go and I just want to make some phone calls and tell some people, like, my life is different now. Things are changed. They were not. They were not changed. Maybe they were for a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a little longer. Maybe I treated people a little different. Maybe I was a little bit happier. Do you know why things weren't changed? Because that experience that I had, where they just turned the air conditioning up, they played the songs a little bit louder, a little bit more spirit, the worship leader got a little bit more into it, started doing that thing where he closes his eyes and gets excited. No, that's just experience. It wasn't that powerful. It didn't have the power to change. I was still left in the dark. It didn't have the power to give me what I needed. It was not strong enough to overcome my sin. It was just a made man experience that even I could take God and make him into an idol in a way that I could take what belongs to him, I could take his church and just make it into something I can control. It's not going to change me. But thankfully, the Lord still had plans that were greater than mine. And he called me. And he did give me his gospel. And he did change me. And he did call me out of darkness. And I belong to him now. And I like that word that Brett really broke down to last week. That I'm not just a servant. I'm not just a bondservant. But now I'm a slave to him. I'm a slave to his righteousness. And if that's true, then I can proclaim boldly, the righteous shall live by faith. And I can know that my faith's in him. Can you do the same? Is the gospel power?